When you hear the word madrasa, what comes to mind? For a lot of us, it's probably headlines about extremism. But that's just a sliver of a much, much bigger story. So today, we're going to dive deep into the history of these Pakistani schools, get real about the challenges they face, and explore how some are completely reinventing themselves for the 21st century.
All right, let's jump right in. You really can't get into this topic without first tackling the perception that, let's be honest, exploded internationally after 9/11. And this quote right here, it really hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures that dominant idea, this link between religious schools and militancy. But is that the whole story? Not even close.
To really get the full picture, we have to rewind. I mean, way back. Because long before any of the modern controversies, you've got centuries of tradition. These institutions weren't born out of conflict. They actually grew from this deep-seated desire for learning that goes all the way back to the very beginnings of Islam.
And this timeline lays it all out so clearly. It started simply, right? Mosques were the original classrooms. Then, during the Mughal Empire, the whole system just blossomed with state support. But then we hit 1866, and this is a huge turning point, the founding of Darul Uloom in Deoband. This wasn't just another school. It was a direct response to British colonial rule, a powerful move to preserve Islamic learning and identity. Fast forward to 1947, Pakistan is born, and boom, you see this incredible mushrooming of these schools all across the new country.
Okay, here's a term you've got to know. Dar's-e-Nizami. Think of it as the foundational curriculum, the core syllabus that's been around since the 18th century. Now, originally, it was actually pretty broad, but over time, it really honed in on classical Islamic sciences, logic, and philosophy. For centuries, this was the intellectual backbone of madrasa education.
So, now let's jump forward to the modern era, because this is where things start to get, well, a lot more complicated. This is where that long-standing system collides with a whole new set of challenges, and where all that international scrutiny we mentioned at the beginning really starts to take root. Academic analysis points to some really serious structural problems. And research from the Journal of Development and Social Sciences, it highlights 3 challenges in particular that have pretty much come to define the modern madrasa system in Pakistan. First up, deep sectarian divisions. So in Pakistan, madrasas are usually run by different boards. They're called wafaqs, and each one represents a different school of Islamic thought, like Deobandi, Barelvi, or Shia. The problem, as research points out, is that this can create these ideological silos, with each group promoting its own specific views, sometimes fostering intolerance toward others. The second big challenge is the curriculum itself. Look, that Darth-e-Nizami syllabus is historically rich, for sure. But the big criticism is that in many institutions, it just hasn't kept pace with the times. You're often missing modern subjects like science, math, or the kind of language skills you absolutely need for the modern job market. And the results? It can leave graduates really unprepared for life outside the religious sector. And finally, we have the politicization of jihad. Now, the term has a really broad meaning in Islam, about struggle. But during the Soviet-Afghan War in the 80s, one specific interpretation, armed struggle, was actively promoted and funded by external powers, including the United States. This policy, which was supported by the Pakistani state, literally transformed some madrasas into training grounds for militants, forging a link in the public eye that has persisted ever since. But the story doesn't just stop there with all those challenges. In fact, some institutions are tackling these problems head-on, creating a whole new model for what a madrasa can be. We're going to take a look at one really fascinating example in Karachi, Jamia Benoria Alamiya. Okay, get this. Just look at that number, 67. That's how many countries are represented in this one school's student body. So right away, we're not just talking about a local Pakistani school. This place is a global hub for Islamic learning, pulling in students from North America, Europe, Africa, all across Asia. It's pretty incredible. So, how does a place like this tackle that curriculum challenge? By blending the old with the new. The traditional core of Islamic sciences is still there, absolutely, but it's taught right alongside modern subjects like English, science, and even mass communication. The goal is to produce not just religious scholars, but also journalists, developers, and professionals who are deeply grounded in their faith. And the thing is, this whole adaptation goes way beyond just the curriculum. They've built an entire ecosystem for a modern global student body. They bring in international faculty who get what these diverse students need. They run an online academy for distance learning. They have a completely separate, dedicated campus for their female students. And they put a huge emphasis on practical language skills, like Arabic immersion. It's a very, very different model. So, this case study really shows us that you can't paint the madrasa system with a single brush. It's not a monolith, it's a complex, evolving landscape with deep traditions and significant challenges, but also these amazing pockets of profound, intentional change.
The key takeaway from all this is that these institutions are truly at a crossroads. They're faced with this immense task of balancing centuries of sacred tradition with the undeniable demands of a modern, globalized world. It's a difficult, delicate, but incredibly important transformation. And that leaves us with one final, crucial question to think about. Is this modern, integrated model we saw at Jamia Benoria the future for Islamic education? Or is it just one possible path among many in what's going to continue to be a deeply diverse and often contested educational landscape? The answer, well, it's going to shape not just Pakistan, but the wider Muslim world for generations to come.